Good evening and welcome to the Village of Westchester's Telephone Town Hall. My name is Paul Nosek and I'm the Village Manager of the Village of Westchester. And unfortunately, with the new reality that is COVID, we are limited tonight to doing a telephone town hall. But if you would like to follow us online as well, we are streaming live on Facebook, and if you go to the village website, www.westchester.org, and click the Telephone Town Hall read on, it will take you to a page that says 2020 referendum. On that page, you'll see 4 different areas with links to specific sections: a detail list, a descriptions and maps, financial impact, and interactive map. You'll be able to ask questions by pressing 0 on your phone if you're on the live call, and an operator will take your question. Again, the number to call in if you'd like to listen on the phone is 708-581-7326. You can also always email us directly at bonds, B-O-N-D-S, at villageofwestchester.org. Before we jump into this, I'd like to explain a little bit why the village is requesting this money. As many of you know, the infrastructure and streets of the village are in need of some work. We've put together a comprehensive long-term plan so we can get to a maintenance schedule that is possible given our current funding levels. This bond issue addresses 3 major concerns of our residents: the streets, the water mains, sanitary lines, and residential flood mitigation, and the alleys. The streets projects, we have a list of projects that will get 95% of our streets to a condition that is good or very good. That would take up 40% of the bond money to do. The water mains in the village were put in place close to 100 years ago, and we need to start maintaining them better. We have many breaks each year which impact the conditions of the streets because of the need to open them up for repair. This would get us started on a maintenance schedule for them as well. The sanitary lines as well have been in need of updating and maintenance, and by lining the sanitary lines, we will decrease the amount of water that can find its way into your homes and will direct it to where it should go. We will also fund the residential water mitigation program to assist residents with their flooding in their homes, and 50% of the bond money would be going towards those projects. And the third concern is the alleys. We have 10% of the bond referendum going towards the projects to repair and replace our alleys, which have fell behind on maintaining. So those are some of the reasons that we are going forward and asking for this referendum. And again, press 0 to ask any questions. Again, before I turn this over to our Public Works Director, Scott Russell, and Streets Foreman, Steve Crowley, I just want to remind everybody that if you'd like to follow along on our webpage, you can go to www.westchester-il.org and click on the link that says Telephone Town Hall, read more. Now I'd like to turn it over to Scott Russell and Steve Crowley, who are going to talk in more detail about the projects that we're about to do.
Hi, this is Scott Russell, Public Works Director. I'm here with Steve Crowley, my Street Supervisor, Foreman. I'm going to have him go through and talk about some of the different areas and techniques that we will use to combat our infrastructure and depletion of the streets.
Good evening, this is Steve Crowley, Public Works Foreman. Just going to briefly discuss a few of the options that the village has in order to get the streets to the maintenance level. The first being microsurfacing, which is used on good to very good streets to prolong the length of the life of the street. This helps seal the streets and keep it safe from the elements. The second process that we will also be looking into would be a process called hot in place. Hot in place is a very cost-effective way to maintain roads. With hot in place, only certain streets are candidates for this, so that limits the amount of streets that have deteriorated too far, which this process cannot be used. The next thing that we would talk about doing would be a 2-inch mill and overlay. When the streets get to this level, hot in place is no longer candidate for this process. And with the 2-inch mill and overlay, 2 inches of the current asphalt is milled out, and then 2 new inches of asphalt is laid over it. This process is compared to cost of hot in place. Hot in place is about a third of the cost of an actual 2-inch mill and overlay. This is the areas where we want to try to focus on streets and the hot in place and 2-inch mill and overlay to keep the cost of the roads down. The final thing that we have to concentrate on is total reconstruction of a road. This is where a road is too far neglected and deteriorated, where it needs all new concrete curb and gutters, driveway aprons. The sub base under the asphalt needs to be removed and replaced. When the streets get to this stage, this is the most expensive repair that the village has to make. This, compared to a 2-inch grind overlay, this is double the amount of a 2-inch grind overlay. So by getting this referendum passed, we're hoping to keep the streets from getting to this level by doing the steps prior to with the microsurface and crack filling and 2-inch grind overlay, so that we can maintain the streets for the next 25 to 30 years. Paul briefly touched on the sanitary and storm lines. We will just be lining throughout the town, and water mains will be replaced where needed on total reconstruction roads, and then the alleys will replace in almost 3.5 miles of old alleyway.
Thank you, Steve. Let's go to one of the questions. So one of the questions was, how much will this cost us? Well, that we're gonna go through a little bit later, but approximately on a $250,000 home, it would cost approximately $249 per year in your tax bill. We're looking at a $42 million referendum. I know that we list projects and the total comes out to about 44 million, but those are just estimates, and it's over a 5-year period. And there may be other funding sources and other streets and roads that it may change a little bit. So those are just estimates.
Say, Matt, you have a question? Just say, Matt, do you have a question?
Matt, do you have a question?
Hi, yes, thanks for having me. I was wondering if you could please tell me about any water projects that are currently going on before the referendum would be passed.
At this point, yes, thank you, Matt. At this point, we have funded the residential water mitigation program again, but that only came to $25,000 per year. Other than that, we have not been able to do any other residential water mitigation programs, nor have we been able to line any sewer line or sanitary lines this year. Okay, thank you, guys. Next, we're going to have Tom Reedy with Stiefel Financial to talk about the potential financial impact of the bond referendum. Again, you could follow along at www.westchester-il.org and click on the telephone town hall, read more, and that will link you to, and then click on the financial impact link. So take it away, Tom.
Thank you, Manager Nosek. As Paul mentioned, my name is Tom Reedy with Stiefel Financial. I'm happy to be here this evening, and thank you all for joining us, whether via Facebook Live or on the telephone town hall. So I've been working with the village administration to develop a couple of financing options for a successful passage of the bond referendum should the village voters approve it. But before getting into the numbers themselves, I just wanted to give a brief overview of what approval of a referendum means. So Should the referendum be successful, that would authorize the village to issue bonds over a period of 5 years. Any amount of bonds that was not issued over that 5-year period, the village's authority would run out on that. And that's important because there are several years worth of projects that the village is considering. So as we're developing a financing plan, which I'll get into in just a moment, we wanted to avoid paying any additional interest costs by issuing all of the bonds at one time, but only issue the bonds once the projects have been specifically identified for construction that year, and only issue the amount that's needed in a given year.
If I could interrupt, so as an example, if we had $10 million worth of bonds one year, 12 million the next year, 8 million the next year, each bond would be for those specific amounts?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe those amounts have all been developed in consultation with the Department of Public Works and the village engineer. So
Yes, and to add to that, our engineers did include amounts for inflation and prices over the next 5 years.
So another important point to note is that the maximum maturity, which is set forth by statutes, is that an issue of bonds issued pursuant to a referendum cannot go out longer than 20 years. So we'd be confined to a 20-year final maturity of the bond issues. Just a note on the current market. The current economic environment does offer historically low interest rates, which is beneficial for the village in borrowing money at the current time, because as everybody knows, a portion of debt service is going to be principal repayment. There's also going to be an interest cost. So the lower the interest rates, the better in terms of mitigating the tax impact for residents of the village. For those of you who are able to see the information on Facebook Live or on the village's website, I've included a chart at the bottom left of this slide that does show the 10-year history of the MMD curve. The MMD curve is the municipal market data curve, which is the tax-exempt interest rate curve, similar to what the treasury market would be considered in the taxable universe. But as the village is able to issue tax-exempt bonds, they typically carry a lower interest rate than taxable bonds do. As you can see, if you're able to view the material, the blue bars each year represents the range of the MMD in each year over the past 10 years. And then the darker blue line that goes from left to right across the chart represents the current yield curve. And as you can see, the current yield curve is very close to the bottom of that range over the last 10 years. And I can tell you that within the last several months that the municipal market data curve has set all-time lows. So when you're looking at that 10-year range, the bottom end of that range is also all-time low levels for many maturities. So on this next slide, if you're able to view the material, we have taken some estimates provided by the village engineer showing a proposed schedule of issuing bonds over that 5-year period. And what you can see is that we issue the bonds with a final maturity of 2024, which would be no more than 20 years from the 5th issuance. And then we're incorporating estimates for proceeds necessary in a given year. One other point that I'd like to make is that I just pointed out that we are close to historic low levels in the interest rate markets. So in coming up with these estimates for debt service, we have built in a pretty significant cushion to allow for any volatility in the interest rate market over the next 5 years, similar to how the village has been conservative with their estimates for project costs and building in inflation. into some of those project costs.
If we could take a question related to this from Mark Rosicki. Hi, Mark, go ahead with your question.
Oh, yeah, I was just curious, is that on interest rates like you're talking about for the bond issue, I assume that those remain fixed throughout the life of the bond?
Correct. So we would not anticipate issuing any variable rate debt. It would all be issued at a fixed rate. Any bonds that go out longer than 10 years, we typically have an 8 to 10 year call option for the village, meaning that the village could call the bonds at par if interest rates are favorable down the line and achieve savings on those bonds. But you're correct that the interest rate would be set at the time of pricing for the life of the bonds.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, so as you can see here, if you're able to view the material, we show 3 different home values on the right-hand side of the page to give residents an idea of what the potential tax impact would be for these projects over the life of the bonds, and keeping in mind that once these bonds are paid off, the village, the taxes would go away. This isn't an operating levy that would be in place. Indefinitely. The taxes, that tax would be reduced at the point in time when the bonds were paid off. So you can see on the right-hand side for a homeowner with a $200,000 market value home, we estimate in the using the assumptions that we've talked about here this evening that the annual tax impact for that $200,000 home would be about $191, and you can see the $235,000 home, which is the median home value per the most recent census data that is available, is a $231 impact on an annual basis, and then for a $250,000 home, we estimate it's about $249 annual tax impact over the life of the bonds.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Let's take another question from Frank. Go ahead, Frank, with your question.
Oh, hey, sorry, after listening to the conversation, my question was actually answered. I was just curious of how much, this would cost on taxes, and it's been answered a couple times, so sounds
Okay.
good.
Excellent, thank you very much.
How are you?
And how about a question from Spencer?
Yes, I would like to, the question I want to know is, have we ever done a bond issue like this before?
Not that I'm aware of.
The village does have
Right now, because
The village does have 3 bond issues that are outstanding, that have been issued within the last 10 years or so. But given the village's non-home rule status and some of the debt limitations per the statutory restrictions, the village does not have this large of a bond issue outstanding at this point.
okay.
Thank you. And so, the bond issue, if you've had a chance to look through any of our material, it's approximately $10 million worth of projects each year for 5 years straight. And that will get us to a maintenance level where current funding, by current funding I mean the sales tax dollars that we receive every year that go towards capital projects, and our motor fuel tax that goes towards some of our street programs. Those current dollars will be able to be used now for strictly maintenance. So we're playing a little bit of catch up, but once we, if we're able to do this issue and get all these projects done, then we will be on a maintenance schedule moving forward. So anyone who's on the call, if they have a question, please press 0 and you could ask your question. Okay, Jean, go ahead with your question. Hi, Jean, go ahead with your question.
Oh, sure. I think I just came up with two questions. The first one is, we have a number of totally unpaved alleys on the north side of Westchester. When I looked at the list of projects, it didn't seem that the unpaved alleys would be paved with this bond referendum.
Greg, you got that, the picture of the alley? This one?
Thanks, Jean. Let us take a look at that, and we'll answer that in a second.
It'll be posted. It'll be online.
Okay, Tom.
Yeah, go ahead.
Our website guy will be putting an updated alley project list that's gonna be coming up that will show which alleys are gonna be highlighted. And if you look on the internet right now that it's showing, it shows what alleys will be resurfaced, which and then which alleys will be reconstructed. And if you scrolls down, I think we are spending a total of $4.4 million on stone alleys to be paved or concreted, and majority of them will be taking place in the north end of town. If you have a specific address, we can let you know if that one's getting done.
Well, and that's the other thing. On our website, there is an interactive site. If you punch in your address, you'll be able to see what projects are going to potentially get done and when they would be getting done.
And the alleys are on that.
And the alleys are on there as well. Thank you, Gene. Okay, we have a question from Craig. Hi, Craig, go ahead with your question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay. Several years back, we had a referendum to increase the sales tax in Westchester, and that money was specifically supposed to be earmarked for street repair. How much money was collected since that sales tax has been in, and what happened to the money, and why isn't that being used now for the streets?
That currently is being used. We have another list of all of the streets that have been done with those funds, and on an annual basis, I don't remember off the top of my head, I want to say it's about $500,000, and every year that goes towards the maintenance of our streets. And that goes strictly into their capital projects fund. This year we just recently did Bristol Avenue with that money.
Total reconstruct.
There was a total reconstruction that we used that money for. Thank you. Hi Vito, go ahead with your question.
The cap on how much money can act borrowed? I know all the estimates
Yes.
are always done in good faith, trust them, but, as you know, sometimes costs go up.
Absolutely.
And,
Great question, Vito. Yeah, so in the ordinance that was passed, we are only able to go up to $42 million in debt. So any projects over that, we would have to find other funding sources. Obviously, we've built in inflation for our cost estimates. The engineers have done that. So that's why our projects show about 44 million, the list of them. But we are obviously, each year, we will go through the project list, come up with our estimates, go out to bid for them, and then issue the debt accordingly. But the maximum will be 42 million. Thank you. Hi Brenda, go ahead with your question. Hi Brenda, go ahead with your question. Oh, looks like we lost Brenda. Okay. Hi Deborah, go ahead with your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I was wondering, I live on the block where we get a lot of water damage when we have big storms, and I know this is due to the, the climate change. But is the village turning off the water system or turning off the backup system so that the water is just going back into the street? Or are they just letting it flow into the houses? Because I've had this several times that the water is backing up into my house. And then the neighbors, all of us are coming out and just trying to clear out the sewage so that we can get some drainage going on.
Sure. Thank you for your question. I'll have Steve Crowley answer that for us.
How you doing? Yes, to answer your question, the Village of Westchester has two separate stormwater. We have a stormwater system and a sanitary water system. The stormwater mains take the street drains, and if your gutters go into the ground, they flow into the storm main. The sanitary system takes everything else in your house: your laundry tub, your floor drain, your showers, your sinks, your toilets. So the systems are not connected. So when you see standing water on the street, that's because all of our storm water runs out to Addison Creek or Salt Creek. So when the level of the creek gets higher than the pipe, from the back pressure, it takes that much longer for the water to drain off the streets because the pipe is submerged under the creeks with the heavy rains. When you're getting the backup in the basement, that is our sanitary system getting infiltrated by that storm water. So what we're trying to do with the lining of the sections that we want to do, which if this bond is passed, we will be able to line 21 miles of sanitary out of 51 miles that the town has. So what this will do, this will help seal the system up so that the rainwater is not infiltrating into the sanitary system. Plus, with the flood mitigation money in this to help residents put in flood control protections in their home is the way that we're going to try to help resolve this issue.
Thank you for your question. Hi, Esther. Go ahead with your question, Esther. Hi, go ahead with your question. Hello? Okay. Hi, Stephanie. Go ahead with your question. Stephanie? Hi, Stephanie?
Yeah.
Hi, go ahead with your question, please.
My question was, the street, I live in Westchester, close to the expressway, and she answered my question. When it rains,
Oh, okay.
and the water bags up, it comes up through the sink and stuff,
Okay.
like that. And the street, they didn't pave down here by the end of the block, by the expressway and the alley, they didn't pave them.
Yeah, that's what we're looking to do with some of this bond money and to help those exact type of situations. Thank you. Hi, Jean. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I'm back on the alleys.
Yeah.
You told me you referred me to the back, and I put in an address for a house that I know has an unpaved alley behind it, and it didn't say anything on that house that the alley would be paved. And also, I just want to let you know that the acronyms that are on there are not very clear as to exactly what you'll be doing in each of the locations. My second question is, I'm just wondering about any potential future financial issues that the village is going to be seeing. For instance, we defeated a request for additional funding for police recently, and I'm sure there's some other big things that are just not happening that we need money for. So I'm curious to know if this is really I know this is a huge thing, but is there something else that's coming down the road?
No, not that we're seeing in our future. That's why we've done the 5-year plan And actually, the 5-year plan extends out to 10 and 15 years with our roads and infrastructure. I'm not sure what you were referring to as far as police funding, though.
Oh, a couple of years ago, the village, put up a bond referendum on the ballot to fund additional police staffing.
Oh, okay. So I know we've gone for federal grants, and we received those, and we were able to hire 3 officers utilizing that. And that's not to say that we aren't going to continue to go for grant money and any federal money. We're going to continue down those roads as well to mitigate any need to take on any more debt. Obviously, we don't want to take on debt, but in this situation, we think it's a prudent thing, given the low interest rates and given the fact that we have a established plan that will take care of a lot of our issues going on in the village. So I hope that answered your question. Thank you.
Is the 5-year plan posted online?
Yes. Yes. The list of projects, those are broken down by type, but they all are within the 5-year plan. And we'll have more information coming out as well. I'm sorry? Thank you very much. So we have no more questions, so I hope this was informative for everybody. We appreciate you taking the time to listen. And if you didn't have time to ask a question tonight or think of one later, please do not hesitate to contact Village Hall. We've set up an email specifically for questions. It's bonds, BONDS, at westchester-il.org. This is only the first meeting regarding the bond referendum, and there will be more to follow, including another town hall, information in our monthly newspaper, on our website, along with additional material that will be available at Village Hall, including storyboards that will be posted in our village vestibule to lay out all the projects that we're doing and describe in detail the processes that we're going to use to do these projects. We want to give you all the information possible so you can make an informed decision regarding this very important bond referendum. Thank you again, and good night.
Okay, that was good. You had over 900 people.